Who is you, man? I ain't seen you in like a decade. It's not what I expected. What did you expect?
When thinking of the past decade in film, there are numerous things that are immediate standouts. If I were to be asked to name a few, it would be easy to point out the Marvel Cinematic Universe with their box office dominance, the technical achievement of Mad Max Fury Road, or the absolute force that Bong Joon-ho's Parasite was both critically and commercially for a South Korean film. Only later did I think of all the new and unique voices that have been shown off in the past decade. Whether it be Garland, Peele, Coogler, or Gerwig, there are so many talented directors that have really made their mark for this decade. However, none of them have been able to share their voice much like Barry Jenkins. Barry Jenkins is a director from Florida that rose to stardom with his sophomore film in Moonlight. This feature came to Jenkins in a stage play written by Terrell Alvin McCreary, which is the first time he felt like he had seen his story presented in the same way. In a lot of ways, this unique exposure prompted him to adapt a story that evoked that same feeling of being heard and validated in so many others. Moonlight is a coming-of-age story from the perspective of a gay black man growing up in the hood. While there can be jokes made about a checklist of importance for something like award season, there has never been a story from this perspective to reach as many people and give a voice to so many that felt voiceless. Jenkins achieves this with very intimate camera work, constantly lingering on characters staring directly into the lens to make it seem like you see their very soul. Jenkins feels comfortable drawing scenes out, stressing the importance of each of these moments, a comfort due to so much familiarity with the source material. It is in this familiarity that Jenkins is able to create beautiful moments in a tragic story, but never shying away from the brutality either. There's plenty of films with a shy protagonist, but there's such a unique juxtaposition to being a quiet kid in this loud and terrifying atmosphere. Barry Jenkins has a lovely way of presenting senses in a film that can make it feel grounded, but also give it a dreamlike wonder, which has evident influence from his affinity for Chungking Express and Wong Kar-wai's style. While there are borrowed influences from many people, this stands out completely as something unique on its own. The most beautiful thing about Moonlight is not only did it push why representation matters, but it also inspired so many others and to this day remains in their hearts. The moment of exuberance so many felt when Moonlight actually won Best Picture is something I would never take away from anyone. 1 year removed from the Oscars So White campaign, there were so many people that got into film because of this win, validating how they felt about this momentous feature. Moonlight has cemented its place in history as the defining voice for the decade, creating something so meaningful to the world. But where the magic happened was how important this project was to Jenkins, which I'll let him explain.
Liberty City is the neighborhood in Miami where myself and Terrell grew up. It's kind of like the Compton or South Central of LA. It's sort of the same neighborhood in Miami. And it's interesting because I don't talk about being from there a lot. And so not a lot of people knew that aspect of my biography.
A mutual friend of mine and Terrell's read Terrell's play in Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue, gave it to me, and right away I just saw a lot about the place I grew up, and in particular this relationship I had with my mother in Terrell's piece. And when I found out that it was largely biographical, not fully biographical, but largely, I just saw so much in Terrell's story that I just felt like I had to find a way to tell it. The beautiful thing about it was the play was set in the actual place I grew up in, so I could take these memories that I feel like Terrell had placed into the play, and I could merge them with my memories. And the way I think is visual, and I don't think in sort of like a closed space. And so it wasn't necessarily like I had to take the play and expand it, I just applied it to the places I knew and saw growing up. And again, it's just kind of like, I was like, oh my God, I lived this. Oh, I didn't live this, but I lived it, And once it was like hitting at that one-to-one level, again, just getting it up on screen as I was adapting the play to script form, it just kind of worked.
I thought I could hide behind Terrell. I wasn't revisiting my life, I was revisiting his life. But then he went away, exactly. And I went to Brussels, Belgium to write the first draft. And I wrote it in 10 days. It just came pouring out of me because I realized, or I didn't realize, I was putting myself fully into it. I sort of fell into it because there's this character who's basically his mom, and my mom and Terrell's mom both went through this horrible addiction to crack cocaine. And Naomi Harris, plays our mom in this film, essentially. And it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do because I had to separate myself, the director, from myself, the human being, reliving all these things that I've tried my hardest to not relive. But this really beautiful thing happened where, because I was feeling so much, it came out in the craft. I want to go to this place that I think it needs to go to. If I'm going to dig up this shit, then the audience is going to experience it, as potently as possible.
The first element of it was, again, trying to take the coming-of-age format, and instead of telling, like, this huge arc where it's like, a plot point, just taking one singular moment, and, viewing it at a microscopic level, immediately creating space, Instead of having 2 minutes for the ripple, we have 10 minutes for the ripple. Because I knew I wanted to watch these characters, evolve, like, in real time.
So I think it's a good thing that different people are seeing different thematic issues, different themes in the film. Because I think what's happening is people are bringing things to the film,
right.
And the film is like this reflection, And so not everybody's going to get the same thing out of it. For me, it's a coming-of-age story about this very particular neighborhood that I'm from in Miami, the playwright Jerome McCraney is from. But it's also about the idea of masculinity, and then about the performance of masculinity. I would say it's about anything. It's about how this sort of conversation of nature versus nurture, and how people can begin to perform what they think the world is expecting of them. I wanted it to be very jarring for the audience,
Yeah.
Like, literally, that this person has physically become someone else. And I wanted it to be represented as an attempt, literally, to erase himself, I like to think of the movie as a character who's retreating within himself, And so he's putting up, like, literally just building up this firmament, arming himself. And the idea is, the world is not going to see me anymore.
Right.
I'm going to show the world what I want to be seen of me. And yet at the same time, I wanted to do it in a certain way where you have that initial reaction, and then over the course of the third story, you start to realize you're looking at the same person, and you're witnessing somebody trying to bury themselves. But none of us can really truly do that. At our core, we're always going to be that person. That's the essence of us. In The Blink of an Eye, by Walter Murch, he talks about the eyes being the window into the soul. And he's an editor, so he literally says when you cut, you're putting up a barrier between the audience, and the characters on screen. What I felt like was, if you could look into these guys' eyes and see the same person, then we can have this continuum where you get to the end where Trevante Rhodes is all jacked up, but Alex Hibbert, who plays him in the first story, is still inside there. And so it was all about, is the sort of spirituality and the emotion of the characters as reflected in their eyes. I just want people to maybe through these characters understand how the world can affect some of these kids who grew up in this community like Terrell and I did, and how it can sort of like promote the idea of performing this version of masculinity that isn't truly who these men are, and sometimes can lead you to become something that you aren't necessarily.
And all you people out there who feel like there's no mirror for you, that your life is not reflected, we have your back. And for the next 4 years, we will not leave you alone. We will not forget you.
Give me your head. Hey, let your head rest in my hand. Relax. I got you, I promise.